It is the worst fraud, the worst deception in American history, and it continues to be found out. So, a story to share with you. Now, there are horror stories everywhere of how of how parents are used as pawns to instigate by these imposters to instigate their darker schemes. But a story to share with you is that here in Utah, about 8 years ago, a mother told a bunch of lies to an imposter attorney who then used those lies for their own financial gain. And the father, rather than continuing to just fight it, and let them use one tactic or another, decided to just hunker down and wait until the child was old enough to remember the father and what happened and all that. And when the father did finally start making noise about these injustices, those attorneys and imposters did exactly what they could be expected to do. They started doing worse and worse things to cover up the worse and worse things that they do. And where this goes is that this mother, during that time, forged the child's passport, trying to sneak the child out of the country without the father knowing, even though forging a child's passport could have a penalty of 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. This mother lied to different police departments on the same day, would disobey court orders, even in order to go to mediation, but then blamed it on the other parent. This mother tried to rape the father after doing all this, went over to the father's house at 3 a.m., banged on the door, demanded that he do X-rated things to her, and when he refused to respond, she called him an asshole and left. And this is all in text messages that I've seen. This mother will gaslight the father in horrific ways as it's convenient, and then reverse gaslight and reverse all that as it's convenient to the mother. And most recently, this mother demanded that the father get a psychological evaluation, probably because the mother wants to know why he hasn't been provoked to react in the ways she had wanted him to. And the father suggested that they both get psychological evaluations. And to play along, the court agreed. And so the mother agreed with that, knowing that the next day the mother was going to ask the judge to overturn it for the mother, so the mother wouldn't have to get a psychological evaluation, only the father. And it seems that the commissioner played along in this case just because they were wondering why the father hasn't been provoked to react in these ways either. Now the additional horror to all this is that after the judge allowed the mother to skip out on the psychological evaluation, the mother then did things involving the child and a foreign strain of COVID, which exposed an entire school, its staff, and everyone who goes to that school and their families and all the other kids at homes to that foreign strain of COVID. And this is just an example of how these people do worse and worse things to cover the worse and worse things they do, and then it leads to worse and worse things for everybody else. Now, the commissioner in this was Commissioner Russell Manaus, and the judge was Judge Faust. And what I have to suggest is that I have a hard time believing that Judge Faust would risk his legacy and the legacy of his family here in Utah over such a trivial matter. And what that indicates is something I've suspected for a long time, is it seems that there is a group here in Utah, and probably every courthouse in the USA, that has hijacked these courthouses and is intercepting paperwork intended for judges and rubber stamping judges' signatures on the paperwork without the judges knowing. And that helps explain why in orders like this, such a trivial order like a person with such erratic behavior getting out of a psychological evaluation, and the order for that being rubber stamped by the judge and ignoring timelines and all sorts of other things. And this helps explain why judges act the way they do in certain cases, why they seem confused and overwhelmed. It's fair to say that what we do to judges is horrific anyway, expecting them to do what they do as a judge. And it's another reason why this whole system needs to change, and to get me in there as Govey-Wovey so we can put real supervision in place for attorneys, for judges, and not allow this to happen. But clearly, there seems to be a group. Maybe it is they're associated, or maybe they've hijacked the group known as AFCC, but they are clearly seem to be intercepting paperwork intended for judges and rubber stamping judges' signatures on it as court orders without judges even knowing. And again, whether this group, whatever it is, AFCC related, hijacked or not, it seems there are judges, commissioners, guardian ad litems, bar associations, conduct commissions, whatever, who are associated, and then others who might not really know what's going on. And that is exactly how corruption happens, where people either do it because they just think it's a necessary means to an end, or because they're a cheap pawn doing something that they think is just a little, no big deal, when really it's allowing other horrific evils to happen, or they really are, fully in it and doing the worst with whatever they can. So we're seeing all of it in all these courthouses, whether it's the Matheson Courthouse here in Salt Lake City, coast to coast. This is real. It is happening.